Hi guys, we're beginning Romans chapter 12 today. We're only going to look at two verses 1 and 2. And I titled this one, What God Really Wants. And conveniently, our New Testament writer Paul has told us. So, Paul begins Romans chapter 12 appealing to his audience. And this is what he says. I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. So, why is Paul saying this? He has just finished explaining how both Jews and Gentiles are loved by God. He has taught that the disobedience of both groups, respectively, caused the other to hear the gospel and receive mercy from the same God. He's just taught both the Jews and Gentiles that they're both now able to receive mercy from God through the gospel. So, because of that reason, or as Paul says, therefore, by the mercies of God, please, he's appealing, please, guys, please, Jews, please, Gentiles, please, everyone who has heard and believed the gospel, please do this. He's giving us instructions, guys. So number 1 here is present yourselves. Paul tells us to present our bodies as living sacrifices. What is a sacrifice? Well, generally it's something you give up for the benefit of someone or something else, right? But in the Bible, it's usually an animal that dies to please God. But fortunately, it says living sacrifice. He wants us to be living sacrifices. Fortunately, God isn't asking us to crawl up onto the altar and be killed for him, right? So he's asking us to offer our physical minds and our physical bodies to him in continual acts of self-denial. God wants us to deny our sinful desires, which we all have, and please him by making daily choices to do good instead. So it's not that hard to understand. He wants us to cease from doing evil and do good as his children, as we should. So that's number 1. Number 2 is not be conformed. Next, Paul is saying, do not be conformed to this world. He's telling us to be different from the culture around us and to do things contrary to those in our lives who do not know or love God. In other words, don't do what the ungodly do. Even though many of the influences closest to us, many of the influences in the world, they're all often acting together in godless thoughts, godless words, and godless deeds. And it's all around us all the time. But we need to do something different, something that honors God among those who don't know him. We don't need to watch the same things as they watch. We don't need to do the same things as they do. We don't need to talk like them. We don't need to do anything that's going to dishonor God. And there's a lot of things that do that. So God's asking us to do something different, to not be conformed to this world. But instead, he gives us something else to do, right? He says to be transformed. Paul says to be transformed by the renewal of your mind. God wants us to change our ways by thinking on good, worthy, pure, holy things, noble things. He wants us to focus on him and to stop paying attention to everything designed to lead us away from his truth in the world. And he wants us to do it for a reason. And the reason that Paul gives us is number 4, discern. God wants us to discern things correctly. And we can't do that when we have garbage coming into our mind, and we're doing, ungodly things all of the time. We can't discern right from wrong when we're in the middle of all of that. So the reason that God wants us to not conform and to be transformed and be different from the world is so that we're able to discern his will. God wants us to be able to know and understand what he wants us to do with our lives and what our time on this earth is for, because we don't get a whole lot of it. And we can't do that when we're caught up in all the ungodly works in the world. They basically, it makes us not be able to hear God when we're caught up in all of that. And what kind of a witness are we anyway when we do those things? So God wants us to be able to recognize good from evil. And we can't do that when we have a foot in both worlds, right? The devil masquerades as an angel of light, and he deceives people. So we have to be careful of everything that we do and who we choose to do it with. And that's just the reality of the spiritual war and the battle that is always going on in this world. So Paul's urging believers to act and to walk in a higher calling because we have received such great mercy and forgiveness from God. We ought to have gratitude for that and for those gifts. We should want to please God if we know him. If we don't, there's a problem there, right? We might want to examine ourselves to see whether we're in the faith. But even though the doing so is going to mean sacrificing our old self, sacrificing our old ways, and many of our old habits, maybe some old relationships, so we're going to have to sacrifice those things in order to please God and discern his will, right? So God doesn't want fancy shows of giving. He doesn't need anything that we have. He just wants our hearts. He just wants us to give our lives for his glory and follow him in doing good in the world, which is exactly what he did. So tomorrow we're going to move into Romans chapter 12, verses 3 through 8. And we're going to talk about the gifts that God gives his people to help one another and serve one another. So hopefully that was helpful. I know it was a little short today, but you guys have a good day.